Welcome to Still Before Sleep. Tonight, let yourself settle into a quiet winter evening by the fireplace. Outside, soft snow falls gently over the countryside, covering the world in peaceful silence. Inside an old cozy cottage, a warm fire crackles softly, filling the room with golden light and comfort. There is no rush, no worry, nothing you need to do. Just allow yourself to get comfortable, perhaps under a warm blanket. Take a slow, deep breath in and let it out gently. Feel your body begin to relax, your shoulders soften, your mind quiet down. This is a gentle sleep story, meant to help you unwind and drift naturally into deep, restful sleep. If you fall asleep before it ends, that's perfectly okay. That's exactly what it's here for. Now, let the evening begin. The snow had been falling since morning, soft and steady, blanketing the world in a pristine layer of white. By evening, the countryside had transformed into a winter painting, peaceful and still. The old cottage at the edge of the forest stood warm and welcoming, its windows glowing with gentle golden light that spilled out onto the snowy garden. Inside, the fireplace crackled softly, its flames dancing in shades of amber and gold. The wood released its warmth slowly, filling the room with the comforting scent of burning oak and pine. The cottage was small but perfectly cozy, with thick stone walls that held the cold at bay and wooden beams across the ceiling that had darkened with age. Emma settled into her favorite armchair, the one positioned closest to the fire. It was an old chair, upholstered in faded burgundy fabric that had grown soft over the years. The cushions knew the shape of her perfectly, welcoming her like an old friend. She pulled a wool blanket over her lap, feeling its weight settle comfortingly across her legs. Outside, the wind whispered through the bare branches of the trees, but inside, all was calm. The only sounds were the gentle crackling of the fire and the occasional settling of logs as they burned. Emma watched the flames, mesmerized by their endless dance. Each flicker seemed to tell a story, each shadow a secret shared in the quiet evening. The day had been long but satisfying. She had spent the morning baking bread, and the cottage still held the faint, yeasty aroma of fresh loaves cooling on the kitchen counter. In the afternoon, she had walked through the snow to the village, her boots leaving a trail of footprints that were already being covered by fresh snowfall as she made her way home. Now, as darkness settled fully over the landscape, she felt the peaceful exhaustion that comes from a day well spent. Her cat, Whiskers, padded softly across the wooden floor and jumped up onto her lap, circling once, twice, 3 times before settling into a purring ball of gray fur. Emma stroked his soft head, feeling the vibration of his contentment. The fire popped gently, sending a small shower of sparks up the chimney. Emma smiled. There was something deeply satisfying about a fire, something primal and comforting. It connected her to countless generations before her, all who had sat just like this on winter evenings, grateful for warmth and shelter. She had prepared a simple supper earlier, soup made from vegetables from her autumn garden, thick with carrots and potatoes and herbs she had dried in the summer. A slice of her fresh bread, still warm, with butter that melted into golden pools. A cup of chamomile tea, sweetened with honey from the beekeeper down the lane. The meal had been perfect in its simplicity. Now, with the belly full and the fire warming her, Emma felt a deep sense of contentment wash over her. This was her favorite time of day, These quiet evening hours when the world seemed to pause and breathe. No demands, no rushing, just the gentle passage of time marked by the burning of logs and the falling of snow. She thought about picking up her book, a collection of poetry that sat on the small table beside her chair. But the fire was so hypnotic, so peaceful to watch, that she decided to simply sit and let her mind wander. There would be time for reading later, or perhaps tomorrow. Right now, the evening invited stillness. The cottage had been her grandmother's before it became hers. Emma had spent many childhood winters here, learning to appreciate the quiet beauty of the season. Her grandmother had taught her how to bake bread, how to tend a fire, how to find joy in simple things. The old woman had moved slowly in her later years, but with such grace and purpose that every action seemed like a meditation. Emma remembered sitting in this very chair as a child, much too small for it then, her feet dangling above the floor. Her grandmother would sit in the chair across from her, knitting by the firelight, the needles clicking in a steady, soothing rhythm. Sometimes they would talk, sharing stories and dreams. Other times, they would sit in companionable silence, listening to the fire and the wind. Those memories felt close tonight, as if her grandmother's presence still lingered in the cottage, woven into its very fabric. Emma felt grateful for this inheritance, not just the physical structure of the cottage, but the wisdom of how to live peacefully within it. The clock on the mantel ticked softly, its face reflecting the firelight. It was an old clock, its brass case tarnished with age, but it kept perfect time. Her grandfather had wound it every evening before bed, a ritual he never missed. Emma continued the tradition, finding comfort in the familiar task. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Emma could see it through the window, each flake caught for a moment in the glow from the cottage before disappearing into the darkness. The world beyond her walls was cold and white, but here in her sanctuary, all was warmth and golden light. Whiskers shifted on her lap, stretching one paw out and then relaxing again with a deep, satisfied sigh. Animals understood comfort better than humans sometimes, Emma thought. They knew how to simply be present, to enjoy warmth without worrying about tomorrow's cold, to rest without guilt. The fire had burned down slightly, and Emma considered whether to add another log. Not yet, she decided. The current flames were perfect, not too high, not too low, just right for watching and dreaming. The logs currently burning would last another half hour at least, maybe more. She let her gaze drift around the room, taking in the familiar objects that made this space home. The bookshelf built into the wall, crowded with volumes collected over years. The photographs on the mantel, black and white images of people long gone, but never forgotten. The dried lavender hanging from a beam, filling the air with its subtle fragrance. Every object had a story, a history. The blue ceramic bowl on the side table had belonged to her great-aunt. The quilt draped over the back of the sofa had been made by her grandmother's mother, each square a different fabric, some from old dresses, some from shirts, all stitched together with love and patience. There was a richness in these connections to the past, a sense of being part of something larger than herself. The cottage held generations of quiet winter evenings, of fires tended and stories shared, of life lived simply and well. Emma's eyes grew heavy. The warmth, the soft light, The gentle sounds all combined to create a perfect lullaby. She didn't fight the drowsiness. There was nowhere she needed to be, nothing she needed to do. This evening was hers to spend exactly as she wished. Through the window, she could see a few stars beginning to appear between gaps in the clouds. Winter stars always seemed brighter somehow, clearer and more distinct. Perhaps it was the cold, crisp air, or perhaps it was simply that the long, dark nights gave them more stage on which to perform. She thought about the village, nestled in its valley a mile away. Other cottages would have fires burning too, other people settling into their evening routines. Mrs. Peterson would be knitting by her window. The blacksmith and his wife would be playing cards at their kitchen table. Young Tom, the baker's son, would be reading by candlelight in his room above the shop. Each person in their own space, yet all connected by the shared experience of winter, of evening, of finding comfort against the cold. There was something beautiful in that, Emma thought. The way humans created warmth and light and coziness, little pockets of civilization against the vast indifference of nature. But nature wasn't truly indifferent, was it? The snow that blanketed the earth also protected it, insulating seeds and roots and sleeping creatures. The cold slowed everything down, gave the world time to rest and restore itself. Winter was necessary as spring and summer and fall. The fire crackled again and a log shifted, settling deeper into the embers. The flames leaped up briefly, then subsided into their steady dance. Emma watched, her mind quiet and peaceful. There was a meditation in this, a kind of prayer without words. Whiskers began to purr louder, his whole body vibrating with contentment. Emma smiled, continuing to stroke his soft fur. Animals were such good teachers of presence, she thought again. They didn't worry about yesterday or tomorrow. They simply experienced now, fully and completely. The tea in her cup had cooled, but Emma took a sip anyway. The chamomile was mild and sweet, with just a hint of honey. It would help her sleep later, when she finally made her way upstairs to bed. But that was still hours away. For now, she was content exactly where she was. She thought about tomorrow, but not with anxiety or planning, just with gentle anticipation. She would wake when the morning light filled her bedroom. She would come downstairs and tend the fire, coaxing it back to life from the embers. She would make coffee and eat a simple breakfast. Perhaps she would read. Perhaps she would bake again. Perhaps she would simply sit and watch the snow. The beauty of winter days was their lack of urgency. The garden didn't need tending. The world outside moved slowly under its blanket of snow. There was time for everything and nothing, time that stretched out peacefully without demands. Emma shifted slightly in her chair, adjusting the blanket. The chair's arms were worn smooth by years of hands resting on them. The fabric was soft and familiar. Everything in this room had been touched and used and loved, and it showed in the best possible way. The fire provided not just warmth, but also light, a golden glow that was so much gentler than electric lights. It created shadows that danced and shifted, making the room feel alive. In firelight, everything looked softer, more beautiful. Faces became ageless, furniture gained character. The whole space became almost magical. Emma remembered reading once about ancient peoples who believed fire was sacred, a gift from the gods. Sitting here now, she understood that reverence. Fire had allowed humans to survive, to thrive in cold climates, to gather together in the darkness. It was transformation made visible, wood becoming warmth and light. Her grandmother had told her once that every fire was unique, that no two fires ever burned exactly the same way. The wood, the arrangement, the airflow, all combined to create something unrepeatable. Emma had been young then and hadn't fully appreciated the observation. Now, she saw the wisdom in it. Even in something as simple as a fire, there was infinite variety, endless beauty. The cottage creaked softly as it settled, the old timbers adjusting to the temperature. These were friendly sounds, familiar and comforting. Emma knew every creak and groan of this place, could tell by sound alone which board had been stepped on, which door opened. Outside, an owl called in the distance, its hoot carrying clearly through the cold night air. Emma listened, hoping to hear an answering call, but there was only silence. Perhaps the owl was alone tonight, or perhaps its mate was too far away to hear. Either way, the single call had been beautiful, a reminder that life continued even in the depths of winter. The snow seemed to muffle sound, wrapping the world in a blanket of quiet. Even the wind had died down now, leaving everything still and peaceful. It was the kind of silence that felt full rather than empty, pregnant with possibility and rest. Emma's thoughts drifted to the cycle of seasons, the way each one brought its own gifts and challenges. Spring with its renewal and growth. Summer with its abundance and long warm days. Autumn with its harvest and spectacular colors. And winter, dear winter, with its invitation to slow down, to turn inward, to rest. Modern life had lost some of this rhythm, she knew. People rushed through seasons now, barely noticing the changes. Stores sold strawberries in January and pumpkins in July. The natural pace of things had been disrupted by technology and commerce. But here in her cottage, Emma tried to maintain the old ways. She ate what was in season, or what she had preserved from her garden. She rose with the sun and lit candles when darkness fell. She let winter be winter, embracing rather than fighting it. There was a freedom in this, a liberation from the constant push to do more, be more, have more. Here, in this simple room with its ancient fire and comfortable chair, Emma had everything she needed. Not everything she could want, perhaps, if she let herself want without limit, but everything necessary for contentment. The fire had burned lower now, the flames smaller but still steady. Emma decided it was time to add another log. She gently shifted Whiskers, who protested with a small mew, but then resettled on the warm cushion she had vacated. She took a log from the basket beside the fireplace, a nice piece of oak, well seasoned and dry. She placed it carefully on the fire, adjusting it so it would catch well. The flames licked at it tentatively at first, then more eagerly, and soon it was burning nicely, adding its warmth to the room. Emma brushed her hands together, then returned to her chair. Whiskers immediately climbed back onto her lap, as if the brief separation had been too much to bear. She laughed softly and resumed petting him. The new log had brought the fire back to life, its flames dancing higher, casting moving shadows across the walls. The play of light and dark was mesmerizing, creating shapes that appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye. A castle turret, a bird in flight, a face in profile. All illusions, but beautiful ones. Emma thought about dreams, about how the mind created its own moving pictures during sleep. Were dreams so different from the shadows on her wall? Both were real in their way. Both told stories. Both could comfort or frighten depending on their nature. Her dreams lately had been peaceful, filled with gardens and sunlight and gentle adventures. She was grateful for that. There had been times in her life when dreams were troubled, when sleep brought anxiety instead of rest. But those times had passed, worked through, and released. Now, sleep was a friend, something to look forward to. Her bed upstairs was soft and welcoming, piled with quilts and pillows. When she finally climbed the stairs, she would slip between cool sheets that would gradually warm with her body heat. She would hear the wind in the trees outside her window, and perhaps the soft hoot of the owl again. But she wasn't ready for bed yet. The evening still held her gently in its embrace. There was no reason to rush toward sleep when being awake was so pleasant. The clock chimed softly, marking the hour. Emma counted the chimes. 8 o'clock. Still early by most standards, but in winter, with darkness falling so soon after midday, the evening felt deeper, older. She thought about making another cup of tea, but decided against it. She was comfortable and didn't want to disturb Whiskers again. The cat had finally fallen into deep sleep, his paws twitching slightly as he dreamed his cat dreams. Chasing mice, perhaps, or birds. Or maybe his dreams were more abstract, filled with warmth and safety and love. Emma let her head rest against the back of the chair. Her eyes remained open, watching the fire, but her body was completely relaxed. This was the state she loved best, poised between waking and sleeping, fully present, but also drifting. The fire continued its eternal dance. Flames rose and fell, wood turned to ash, heat radiated outward in invisible waves. It was a process millions of years old, unchanged since humans first learned to tend fire. That continuity was comforting, connecting her to all of human history. She thought about all the people throughout time who had sat by fires on winter evenings. Cave dwellers watching the entrance to their shelter. Medieval peasants gathered around their hearths. Pioneers in their log cabins. Suburban families before television changed everything. And now her, continuing the tradition in her small cottage. The essential human experience hadn't changed much, she realized. We still needed warmth, shelter, food, rest. We still found comfort in simple things. We still watched fires and marveled at their beauty. Modern life had added layers of complexity, to be sure. But underneath, the basic needs and desires remained constant. A warm place to sleep, enough to eat, safety from predators and storms, connection with others, beauty to feed the soul. Emma had all these things, and she was grateful. The cottage kept her warm and dry. Her garden and the village provided food. The forest around her was peaceful, home only to deer and foxes and other gentle creatures. And while she lived alone, she had friends in the village, people who cared about her and whom she cared about in return. As for beauty, it was everywhere. In the flames of her fire, in the snow falling outside, in the sleeping cat on her lap, in the old books on her shelf and the quilts on her bed and the herbs hanging from the beams. Beauty didn't require wealth or travel or possession of rare things. It was available to anyone willing to notice it. The fire popped again, and a small ember landed on the hearth. Emma watched to make sure it wasn't near anything flammable, but it was safely on the stone, glowing bright orange for a moment before fading to black. Such a tiny drama, she thought, but complete in itself. Birth, life, death, all in the span of a few seconds. Everything had its season, it's time. The log that was now burning had once been part of a living tree, reaching toward the sun, producing leaves each spring, standing tall in the forest. Then it had been cut, seasoned, stored, and now it was fulfilling its final purpose, providing warmth on a cold night. There was a poetry in that cycle, a rightness. When her own time came to an end, Emma hoped she would face it with the same acceptance. She had lived well, fully, savoring each day. She had loved and been loved. She had found meaning in simple things and joy in quiet moments. When her final winter came, she would be ready, but that was far in the future, she hoped. For now, she was alive and warm, watching a fire on a snowy evening, her cat purring on her lap. This moment was perfect, complete in itself, needing nothing added or taken away. The room had grown warmer, almost too warm near the fire. Emma adjusted the blanket, folding it back slightly. Whiskers, ever sensitive to temperature, shifted to a cooler spot on her lap. They both sighed contentedly. Outside, the snow was accumulating. Emma could see it piling up on the windowsill, creating a white frame around the dark pane. By morning, the world would be deeply buried, transformed into something from a fairy tale. The fence posts would wear white caps. The trees would be laden with snow. The path to the village would need to be shoveled, but that was tomorrow's concern. Tonight, she could simply watch it fall, appreciating its beauty without worrying about practicalities. The snow fell because it must, following laws as old as the universe. She watched because she could, grateful for the warmth that allowed her to observe rather than endure. This was the gift of shelter, of civilization, of human ingenuity. The same cold that could kill also created this beauty, and humans had learned to protect themselves while still appreciating the danger and loveliness of winter. Emma thought about the village again, about Mrs. Peterson and the blacksmith and young Tom. She thought about the shopkeeper and the school teacher and the farmer and his family. All of them snug in their homes tonight. All of them watching the snow, or reading, or talking, or sitting quietly like her. In the morning, they would emerge and call greetings to each other as they shoveled their walks. They would comment on how much snow had fallen, how cold it was, how beautiful the world looked. They would help each other if needed, sharing tools or food or simply companionship. This was community, Emma thought. Not constant interaction or obligation, but the knowledge that others were nearby. That help was available if needed, that you were part of something larger than yourself. She had chosen to live somewhat apart, on the edge of the village rather than in its center. But she was still connected, still part of the web of relationships that made up their small society. It was the best of both worlds. Solitude when she wanted it, company when she needed it. The fire was burning steadily now, the new log well caught and producing good heat. The flames had settled into their rhythm, neither roaring nor flickering, but maintaining a consistent dance. Emma loved this stage of a fire, when it had found its equilibrium and would burn steadily for a long time without a tension. Her grandmother had taught her how to build a fire properly, how to arrange the wood for good airflow, how to tell when to add another log and when to let it burn down. These were skills that fewer people knew now, Emma realized. Central heating had made fires obsolete in most homes. They had become decorative rather than essential, romantic rather than practical. But Emma preferred the old ways. A fire was living, breathing, demanding attention, and giving comfort in return. A thermostat was convenient, but soulless. She would take the work and reward of a real fire any day. The evening continued its gentle passage. Seconds became minutes. Minutes accumulated into hours, but time felt fluid rather than measured. The clock marked its progress, but Emma barely noticed. She was suspended in the peaceful present, neither hurrying forward nor looking back. Whiskers stirred, stretched, then resettled with his head on a different part of her lap. His fur was so soft, his weight so comforting. Emma wondered what the world looked like through a cat's eyes. Did he appreciate the fire's warmth the same way she did? Did he notice the snow falling outside? Or was it just meaningless movement to him? Probably, he simply experienced comfort without analyzing it, which was perhaps the wiser approach. Humans had a tendency to think too much, to intellectualize experiences rather than simply feeling them. Whiskers knew he was warm and safe and fed and loved, and that was enough. Emma tried to follow his example, to simply feel the moment without thinking about it. The warmth on her face from the fire, the softness of the chair beneath her, the gentle weight of the cat, the quiet sounds of the cottage settling, the beauty of firelight on old wood. Yes, this was enough. This was everything. The fire continued to burn, and Emma continued to watch, and outside, the snow continued to fall. The evening wrapped around her like a blanket, peaceful and warm and utterly without demand. Time passed, though Emma couldn't have said how much. Could have been minutes, could have been an hour. It didn't matter. The evening was long, and she had nowhere to be but here, nothing to do but rest. Her eyes grew heavy again, and this time she let them close. Just for a moment, she told herself. Just a brief rest while the fire burned, and the cat purred, and the snow fell softly outside her window. The cottage held her safely, as it had held her grandmother and her great-grandmother before her. The fire warmed her, as fires had warmed humans for thousands of generations. The winter surrounded her cottage like a sleeping bear, cold and powerful, but somehow gentle in its stillness. And Emma, in her chair by the fire, let go of the day and drifted into the peaceful darkness of rest, knowing that all was well, that tomorrow would come in its time, and that for now, this moment was perfect, exactly as it was. The fire burned on, faithful and warm, keeping watch through the quiet winter night. The fire has settled into soft, glowing embers. The snow continues to fall quietly outside, and the cottage holds you gently in its warmth and silence. Everything is calm. Everything is safe. There's nothing more you need to do tonight. Let your breathing slow, deeper, and deeper still. Allow your thoughts to fade like the last light of the flames. Let sleep come to you now, naturally, peacefully. Thank you for spending this quiet winter evening with us. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to like and subscribe for more gentle sleep stories. For now, just rest. Good night, sleep well, and sweet dreams.